No, I just say approve.
I'd like to begin our work session this morning on the Heritage Land Bank, and begin by running around the table and quickly introducing everyone here that's going to be participating. Begin with you, Julia.
Julia Tucker, Assembly Council.
Harriet Drummond, West Anchorage Assembly.
You're going to run around the table?
I'm going to run around.
Alrighty then.
Okay, start now.
Assembly.
Ernie Hall.
Jack Ledoux.
Chris Birch,
Jennifer Johnston.
George Michaelis,
Allison Smith, Real Estate Department. Tammy Oswald, Acting Director for the Real Estate Department.
Carly Gaskill, Heritage Land Bank.
Susie Payne, Real Estate Department, Heritage Land Bank.
Very good. Thank you. We appreciate you all being here, and hope we can move through this fairly promptly. George, you're going to be the lead guy here.
well, I am the lead guy initially, and what we'd like to do is, since you called the meeting, and I think you have some questions or concerns or clarification that you'd like to have, we're here to answer any of those questions that you have, and we'll try to clarify. So,
Okay, we can begin with the Q&A, and would recognize the fact the mayor is sitting in the audience with us this morning. Any of the assembly that have questions to begin? Okay, I will lead off then. I was the one that actually called for it, and my main reason for doing this is I've had a lot of people have conversations with me and engage me in conversations in regards to the process and the way that Heritage Land Bank disposes of land. And the comments typically is, it seems to be extremely complicated and convoluted to some point. And I'm curious if there's a way that we can look into maybe simplifying, making it more efficient, whatever we can do in order to handle the disposition of land that the municipality does actually need for its financial school district requirements.
let me start off with that, and then Tammy jump in. So when we talk about the process was designed to make sure that there was opportunity for the public to weigh in on the sale of these lands. And so, number one is, once it's determined that it's excess to the needs of Heritage Land Bank, then they go to the commission, and the commission gives them the approval to basically go forward and try to dispose of the land. Like any land disposal, however, it is never consummated until the assembly approves the disposal. So there is this process where it does go to the commission, and there is opportunity at that time for comment. There's also the competitive aspect of it, is in that it is required to go out on a competitive basis so that all parties have the opportunity to come in and bid on the property. And of course, doing that, you hope to get the highest and best bid, to basically be able to sell the property. They are required in code to sell the property at fair market value, unless it's to a nonprofit or other governmental agency, but basically fair market value. So when you factor those things in, I mean, it's pretty much by code, and it's also pretty much a process that's rote that they have to follow. Now, is it a complicated process? No, not really. Is it a time-consuming process? It takes a little bit of time, absolutely, because you have to schedule the meeting with the commission. You also, make sure that you get the word out there once the commission approves the competitive process to sell a particular piece of land. So you need to make sure it's out there long enough so everybody has an opportunity to basically come forward with some type of a bid on that, sealed bid. And then, of course, the evaluation, and then the other thing is that it would go to the assembly for consummation. So that's the process. And the one piece that I didn't put in there is the appraisal. Obviously, we have to have an appraisal, and it has to be a good appraisal and not a stale appraisal. And appraisals typically are for 18 months. For 6 months to a year. We stretch it to a year, but I can tell you that when an appraiser comes in, they'll guarantee it for 6 months. They don't necessarily guarantee that price after that. So, but we do allow for up to a year on an appraisal. And an appraisal can be $7,000, $8,000, $9,000. So,
Jennifer?
That being said, Mr. Birch and I, of course, have a lot of Heritage Land Bank land, and a lot of it on disposal, but one of our biggest issues have always been the industrial park in Birdwood. And we had discussed at one point, I realized that the plating had expired, right? And so the efforts were to go for replat. And we looked at maybe doing doing it in segments so that it became manageable, and so we weren't in the development business. And so we weren't going to the state and asking for $4.5 million for something we weren't quite sure about as far as the economics. What's the status of that?
Hi, Susan Payne. Yeah, it is a complicated area, as is the Southtown site, due to the planning process, due to the subdivision, Chapter 9, Title 21, subdivision requirements for developing property in Girdwood. The right-of-way standards, 60, 70-foot, curb, gutter, lights, it made it cost prohibitive. So in order to finalize the plat, you have to be able to implement what's required. And that's sort of been the stopping point.
But in Chapter 9, we did amend it to give conditional use permits. And I didn't know if this would apply or if it would be helpful. And I know we were able to put a road in to AWW and MLMP, and it was a driveway, wasn't it? Or
It's a driveway,
It's a driveway.
right, not a road, it's a driveway.
I'm just, I need to ask.
Well, and, again, the Heritage Land Bank, we're not in the business of development.
Right.
So-
how do we, this is, back to the complication, this is a perfect issue of how do we get out of the development business?
well, we sell it. We sell the land. But to sell it, you have to have a development that's willing to come in and buy it. But yes, we can sell land. In fact, they do a good job of selling land. So,
And I think people know it's on the market. It's just the standards in which they have to comply to. And I think when talking to Jerry Weaver, they're discussing amending Chapter 9 to better fit maybe the Girdwood area.
So maybe that might be something that we could work on together.
So, same thing with Southtown site. You've got a little area with a 70, 80-foot wide right-of-way.
Yeah.
But leaves little for development, right, on the
And,
side of the road.
and then I guess my only other Girdwood question would be the squirrel cage.
and we are working.
What's the squirrel cage?
Squirrel cage is an interesting zone piece of property. Best way to put it.
We are working with an individual that's very interested in buying that.
Okay.
And so, in fact, you've had communications with it. And,
And I have.
So
So
we're-
that's sort of looking, I think it's a great idea, great concept.
It's certainly not a reflection on any of our constituents.
Or their assembly people.
Mr. Training.
George, just a quick question for you, it shouldn't take too long. I've asked every mayor since, I don't know, when I came on with Fink, to divest themselves of the land down there, because we're the largest landowner in Girdwood. And every mayor tells me, we're gonna sell it, we're gonna put it in private ownership. I've yet to see a program to make that happen. Because the largest landowner, that place will never develop until we move the land into private ownership. So what's HLB's plan to actually bring the land up for sale?
So let me give you several different pieces of information, and then we'll get specific. When you look at HLB land, obviously we do have a lot in the Girdwood area, and we have some also in the Eagle River area, and we have some, of course, in the Bowl. But when you take that land and you start taking a look at the characterization of that land, it really dwindles pretty fast as to what is something that somebody's going to jump at and want to buy. So let me just give you some examples. We have an awful lot of wetland. Well, the wetland we really want to keep ourselves so that we can establish a mitigation bank that basically will help the city, and it is very profitable to be able to do that. So you take that out, and I'm going to give you a sheet of paper that really shows you what actually is available, okay, reasonable sale. And then you have to think, okay, what about contaminated land? Do we have contaminated land? You bet. We do have contaminated land. So until that is clean, you know, that's going to be problematic to try to sell to somebody. You'll never get fair market value. And then you say, okay, what are some of the other categories that we have to deal with? Well, we have some that is already under management authority by the different departments. In other words, they're either using them for parks or they're using them for whatever purpose. So they're under management authority. And then you have the category, of course, of those particular lands that's inaccessible. So there's an awful lot of lands that we have that's inaccessible or they're on the side of mountains. Not very good for development. So when you start stripping out all these categories, and there's a piece of paper that's being handed around to you that we'll go through, you see that there is not a whole bunch of land. And if you look at this document, you'll see that it's categorized with lands available in the Anchorage Bowl, lands in the Chugach Eagle River area, and lands in the Girdwood area. And now this is HLB lands only. So if you look at HLB wetlands, you'll see that there's, all the way to the right, you'll see that there's 2,047 acres that's just wetlands, and that's A, B, and C. If you look at uplands, uplands are the areas that are not wetlands, but they're not necessarily developable. Some of it could be. So what that leaves is 9,251 acres. So a total of acreage is 11,298. If you look below that where it says conditions on the parcels in HLB inventory, you'll see that we have reverter clauses of 850. So that means we can't sell it to anybody other than another governmental agency. It has to stay in governmental hands, and that's a federal reverter clause. And that's the condition on which we receive the land. So you got 850 acres there. Now, how many acres do we have that's on leases and permits? Well, you can see we have 1,653. And those are to public sector, state of Alaska, et cetera, leases. Then how much do we have under MOA agency management? We've got 1,500 acres. How much do we have reserved for future MOA use? We've got 665 acres. That's where we know that we have a use for it at some future date. It could be for a school site. It could be for a possible public facility. How many inaccessible or mountain parcels, acreage? 3,870. And then contaminated properties, it's 22 acres. And then properties that has potential development, that's 991. And that's spread between the Bowl, Eagle River, and Girdwood. Now, out of that 991, we have been trying to sell some of it. And there is a slowdown on folks basically wanting to buy land for several reasons. Either the financing of it, or either they're not just ready because of the economy to start developing. And so even though we had it on the market, and we have been marketing it, not a whole bunch of it has really been moving. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't, and that doesn't mean that a different strategy could be devised to market it better. It just means that there has been attempts to sell some of those lands. And so like I say, so we're really talking about 991 acres.
How much of that's in Girdwood?
You have that handy, Tammy?
Probably 65%.
So 65%.
65%. How much have we moved into private ownership in the last 3 years
In Girdwood,
in Girdwood?
actually sold.
Yeah.
We have not sold, but we've been leasing and permitting to
But
the
you've
private
sold none?
sector.
I mean, you've not moved into private ownership. I
The
understand the leasing.
last parcel we sold was 5 acres, and 3 of it was greenbelt that came back to the city, and that was in, I think, '06.
Now, what we have done is we've identified all this land that's excess to our needs, and we've identified lands that have the potential for basically being developed at some point in time. And we've given that list to ACDA for them to use as a guideline to see if they can get some type of a development action going. So that has not happened yet. I know that they have the list, and I know that they're looking at it. They've looked at some of the lands, and I think they've made some determinations that they really didn't want to be involved in those particular lands. I think there's some others that may have some potential for them, but I have not received any final confirmation of that. But they do have the list, because we met with them, we gave them the list so that they could start working on it. And the way that would work is, once they have a development plan established for that particular parcel, then they would come back to us with a plan, and then we would come to you to asked to have that land basically conveyed to ACDA for them to develop. But thus far, they have not had any plans for development of those parcels designated to them. Now, we'll probably contact them again, find out what the status of some of those lands are. If they have no plans for development, then I can tell you, we'll start going on the market and selling them. The mayor has given us instructions to start selling as much of the land as we possibly can within reason, especially that is excess to our needs, as long as the market will hold up for us. You know, you don't want to have a fire sale either, because some of that land is valuable, very valuable, some is not.
I think Girdwood's always been a problem because there's a lack of housing down there. And we have a lot of people that try to work down there and can't find any housing in that area would help move into private ownership. It's just, I worked with the Baggage administration the whole time they were here, and I saw zero moved into private ownership. And I would just like to see a plan that comes forward that delineates when we're gonna get rid of this land, identifies parcels so we can move into private ownership. Because without that, the tax base isn't increased down there.
Yeah.
And that's all I've got, Ernie, thanks.
Mr. Hall, to Mr. Trainee. Allison Smith. So in addressing that, what we do is we go back to looking at where our property is and look at the Girdwood area plan for starters that showed, you know, general capabilities throughout the valley. And then under that plan, we drilled down a little further to do a plan for a specific neighborhood. It's called the Crow Creek Neighborhood Land Use Study. And that identified a 1,000-acre area that was then analyzed for specific residential and residential types. So the plan, you know, eliminates the wetlands and the undevelopable areas and stream courses, and came up with, I believe in the 1,000 acres, it was 718 acres of undevelopable property, and leaves us with about 280 acres in this, under this scenario. And if you'd like the map, I can pass that around to you. And under that, then we drilled down a little further and we picked a specific area to start looking at for a subdivision. And we have gone through that entire process for a 28-acre parcel that's now 45 residential lots ready to sell. It's the preliminary plat's completed. It's ready to go out on the market. AWU put a new water transmission main through that area, and it's ready to go. So I mean, we're looking at the plans established for Girdwood, and we are addressing those needs, and that'll be 28 new lots,
Thanks for
45
doing it,
new
because
lots.
I just want to see the land moved into private ownership for a lot of reasons. But that town won't develop, and I know you guys represent it, but it's not going to develop until we have land moving into private ownership. So thank you. Thanks, Ernie.
Mr. Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I heard a few things mentioned along the way to the asking of the questions that intrigued me. Ms. Johnston mentioned that a plat expired. How do, this may be a dumb question, but how do plats expire? There's a plat in my neighborhood that I would love to have expire.
Well, it didn't really expire. It just never got past the preliminary plat.
Oh, I see. So there was an opportunity to create the plat, and the opportunity
Yeah, so there was some preliminary
expired
lines
because of
drawn, and when you
timing.
get to a certain point, it didn't even go through agency review. It got to the point where, yeah, this looks plausible, you know, differentiate different parcels. But when you look at what it costs to implement that, sort of put a halt to it.
So, Ms. Drummond, so basically, a preliminary plat can expire. The plat itself, once it's consummated, does not expire.
I see. Okay. And also, Ms. Payne mentioned 60 to 70 foot right-of-ways that are taking up significant, or right-of-way requirements that are taking up significant developable land. I'm running into this right in my neighborhood. I have a neighbor who's expanding his home and replatting his 2 lots into 1. And he's being, the platting board is requesting that he give up 10 feet of right-of-way in his front yard in order to achieve 60 feet of right-of-way in our residential neighborhood. I mean, Spenard Road has 60 feet of right-of-way. What is the city ever going to do with 60 feet of right-of-way in a residential neighborhood? I think we've got bigger problems in this town that You know, if we're requiring this much right-of-way and rendering neighborhoods undevelopable, especially neighborhoods with raw land, how about in fully developed neighborhoods that have existed for over 50 years? What are you gonna do with 60 feet of right-of-way in a residential neighborhood with 30 homes on it?
Mrs. Drummond, I'm sure that was a rhetorical question, because she has nothing to do with right-of-ways or the ordinance that dictates that, nor does the HLB.
That's right. But it's,
Title 20, hold that thought for Title 21.
yeah,
Anything else, Harry?
not right now.
Mr. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for this. It's very informational. My question is, so land leases, so the city has a land lease with the SOA Prime Lab and Alaska Resort? Because I didn't know that. So what I'd like to know is what other land leases does HLB hold? And if you can't tell me now, that's fine, just send me an email.
We'll get you a list,
That would
and
be
we'll
great.
provide it to everybody.
I would like to have that information. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's actually Appendix D in the work plan.
In the work plan, appendix C? Okay. I don't have it with me, but it's at home.
Mr. Birch, I was curious about maybe a brief, just an overview of inaccessible and mountainous parcels. Is it mountainous like a slope above a certain percentage, or is inaccessible mean?
No roads. Yeah,
Well-
yeah.
But it would be accessible if you built a road to it, or is it?
No, it's up mountaintops.
So it's not a mountainous parcel, but you have access through a mountainous parcel to get to it? Right. So,
Well, it's a combination of both. We have some that are actually just like this, you know, you'd never be able to develop it. And then you've got some, like she says, you have to go through that type of land to get to it. So,
Okay.
which would be almost impossible to do, cost prohibitive.
and just a follow-up, are we fully selected on our state and municipal land entitlements and federal?
It depends on who you ask. If you ask us, we're gonna tell you no. If you ask the state, they're gonna tell you absolutely.
Are there options available for exchanging any of the selected lands for other lands, if that remains open?
Had a meeting the other day on a different subject, but DNR was represented there, and in the Anchorage Bowl area, there's basically nothing really available. So it would have to be in the periphery, it would have to be to the south of us, but right in the Anchorage Bowl area, there's not a whole bunch available. And it's even questionable how much is available right now with DNR to the north.
So there's no over selection then, so that's all final?
Well, you know, we're still gonna question that, going back and check all the records. We seem to think that we do have some more coming to us, but they don't seem to think so. They're counting things that, you know, whether it's appropriate to count or not, I don't know, but, you know, that's something we'll have to sort out.
Well, what I was gonna suggest, if some of the picking included inaccessible and mountainous lands, maybe you can see if we can pick something else, you know, and, kind of exchange, give up the bad stuff and get some good stuff. I wasn't sure if that option was open. I actually did that when I was on the Assembly in Fairbanks. They had potlatch ponds, and we ended up jousting with Siri on that because they had a selection process on some land. But, well, good, thank you.
Ms. Johnson?
That brought up a point, and I'm sorry I didn't bring my 5-year plan with me, but the land that's in management in Indian, is that still the arrangement we have with the state? Is
With the
that-
state, yes.
Harriet?
It's interesting who's in the room because there's a lot of issues in South Anchorage and in West Anchorage, and not a lot of issues in the rest of Anchorage, although I don't know where the Eagle River people are. I'm sure there's some questions there, but in West Anchorage, the elephant in a room is the airport. And the Turnagain Community Council has submitted lots and lots of information to me and Mr. Hall. And I know that they've had continuing comments submitted to the Heritage Land Bank. And most of their suggestions seem to have been turned down. And I'm a little frustrated with that part of the process.
I think we're talking two different documents. There's the West Anchorage plan that's out there for comment now.
No, I'm talking about
Okay, but.
directly to the Heritage Land Bank
Sure.
regarding this draft 5-year plan.
Okay, but if I could just finish for a second. So you've got the West Anchorage plan in here. The West Anchorage plan does in fact get pretty specific about the peripheral lands around the airport, either owned by us or others, or lands that the airport would like to have from us in exchange for lands that we would like to have. So that always has been controversial, and it's very controversial now because this map that's part of that West Anchorage plan lays all that out there. Now, the lands here that we talk about are only those lands if some decision is made regarding the West Anchorage plan. So in other words, if, for example, the airport agreed to give the municipality in exchange for some other lands a large section for a snow dump site on airport lands, which is drastically needed. And we lease it now, but the problem is we can't do any capital improvements to it because we're leasing it. And we need to in order to meet the federal requirements for drainage. So we're negotiating to see if there's something that can be done for that. But that's also included within the West Anchorage plan, and that's very clearly defined. So the transaction piece to it would be once that plan is finally consummated, then these folks, upon the approval of the mayor and the assembly, of course, would be in the business of trying to make that type of transaction or transactions occur. And there's others that's identified in there. And very controversial, always has been for years, as you know. So the way that ties over to here is these guys are the implementers. But they have to acknowledge the fact that that is out there, and that's what you'll see in the plan.
Right, so the district plans guide the actions of the Heritage Land Bank.
The district guide, once it's consummated by everybody, is a plan that they have to incorporate and they use in the coordination of transfer of properties, swapping or selling.
And
Yes.
but there's parts of town that don't have district plans.
That's
either
correct.
in the works or.
That's correct. So
not
they-
even in the near future. So are they stymied in terms of?
No, they can
any
go ahead
development?
and anyway, but if there's a plan, they need to follow the plan, otherwise why would you have a plan?
And the comprehensive plan, the overarching guide to all of that?
Yes, it is, and-
That kicks in if there isn't a particular specific
That's
district
correct.
plan?
And as was mentioned earlier, I think it was Susie that said it, one of the things that, you know, is a guide that they're using, and I think also Allison said it, is the Girdwood plan. Because, you know, they're trying to make this happen, and these transfers and everything else, and be in connoissance with the Girdwood plan as well. So, you know, that's why you have the plans out there, you know, and it's a guide for everybody to use, so we know what we're doing.
But the thing is, it's sometimes it's convenient to follow the plan, and sometimes it's not. And when the community council is objecting to what the plan is coming up with, you have a whole series of dominoes that get difficult to deal with.
Right. But remember, I mean, right now, it's the comment period, so this is when they should be submitting their comments.
Actually, it ended early June.
Okay.
The first comment period.
Yeah, okay.
And now it's back to plan.
So they'll take those, you know, and you know the process from there, they'll take those, they'll look at it, and then they'll come forward. But they do have to justify if there are reasonable comments in there, you know, they certainly have to address them one way or the other. So the comments have to be addressed.
There is actually another comment period coming up. Couple comments. Mr. Birch.
I was just gonna point out as a longtime airports guy that the airports are largely federal funded, and there are reversion clauses that preclude the airport at the risk of giving back federal grant monies to construct taxiways and runways and associated facilities, where they're actually restricted on divesting lands that are within the airport perimeter, which I would assume is a complicated factor.
Ms. Johnston.
Yes, one other issue that was brought up to me is the Potter Valley land use analysis for the Potter Valley area, and particularly for the parcels 135 and 136. That's over the Heritage Land Bank land down, you know the parcels I'm talking
You
about.
talking about section 36?
No, this is Legacy Point, and probably we'll just add to the 5-year plan, just the language is consistent with that, but have you been using it and addressing?
Are you referring to the 13 acres on Golden View or the 130?
The 135, 136.
Okay, that would be, these are down at the corner of the hairpin
Right.
turn. Basically, the plan says that these parcels are partially for residential and partially for access reserve. And basically, that's how we address the the issue in the 5-year plan, is that whenever something comes up that shows there's gonna be some kind of development on that property, that's the time to look at how much of that parcel is actually necessary for improving the transportation in the area. So basically, we've addressed it in the 5-year plan as a longer term.
That land also, I mean, the hairpin turn is the biggest element of it. I guess there's interest to make sure that the rest is open space reserved for it. I think we can deal with that one.
It needs to be platted, and then part of it could be
Right.
designated open space, and part of it to access and whatever 100-foot or 150-foot right-of-way it's gonna take at that corner for
Mhm.
that dealing with the topography.
Any other questions from this? I had one final myself. Municipal properties that are deemed surplus, how does that happen? Who makes that determination, and what's the process?
We take the properties out for agency review, and we allow all the departments to make comments back to the real estate department. Are you talking Heritage Land Bank or all municipal properties? I guess it doesn't matter either
Well,
way. But, yeah, and if there is not a public need determined, then we can declare it surplus and take it to the mayor and to the assembly.
Thank you. Any other questions? None? We'll consider this done. And thank you.
Oh,
This meeting's finished.